Hello. This is the third video of three on the Intro to Cultures series. And in this video, I'll dive into the technical aspects of cultures again to finalize any thoughts that I missed out on in the first couple of videos, and then discuss Culture Earth in a little bit more detail. But I thought I could start just by quickly at a high level reviewing the purpose for cultures again and why I feel like this is an important time to be thinking about this and building cultures or something like it. We are at a time in humanity's history that is unprecedented. The level of technology that we have reached and the amount of potential that is in front of us is immense. And it's interesting that this has also been met with this high amount of pessimism in our current world by a lot of, especially among the younger generation, that we are in some sort of trap and that the future will not be better than the past and that we are headed towards some sort of doomsday scenario. And again, I think that this is a lot to do just with the underlying belief that we are stuck in our current operating system. And this current operating system gives us the feeling like maybe we can't have a better future than our past, and that it's so obviously outdated and inappropriate for our changing world, and it's just being clung on to by the people that are benefiting from this thing, that is kind of a natural response, is just this hopelessness feeling. And so what cultures really aim to do is just to provide that seed of potential, that belief in the future, that underlying feeling that tomorrow will be better than yesterday, and you can wake up in the morning and be excited about the future. And cultures just aim to provide us this foundation to build from, to build on top of, and give us the tools that we need and the functionality that would seem to be best suited for a organizational structure of the future, one that is immune to power, oversight, and control capture, one that is absolutely transparent to encourage this conscious evolution process, one that forces good or has a forcing function for good leaders, true leaders, to emerge, where there's full transparency on how they allocate the resources and how they make their decisions, and it's a competition between invitations. No one individual is forced to support any culture. They have 100% choice of where they spend their time and their ideas and their resources. So this is what, just at a high level, what cultures aim to do. And I think it's having this spark of excitement and this emergence of hope. I think there is something beautiful in that, and that collectively we have the technology and the will and the energy to do this, but it's time for us to build. So this is cultures, and I'll quickly review the technical aspects of cultures here without getting too in depth. And this is evolving as I speak to more people, and we collaborate, and the better ideas win. And this is again what cultures are all about. Let the best ideas win, and if you don't think that is the best, this is the best direction to take it, then can simply fork it and take it in your own direction. And again, just get this conversation and these processes started to develop the operating systems of our future. So cultures have two primary bodies. They have a foundation and a potential. And then all cultures sit on top of a substrate. And this substrate is essentially just an exchange. And this exchange has two primary functions. One is a token generator, and the other is an open ledger, a centralized open ledger. And the token generator simply just emits a single token per second per culture. And no matter what the culture is doing, no matter their output in any metric, they always receive one token per second. And the reason for this is to try to escape this resource growth value vector that is so easy to fall into that trap, because and have your token generator be somehow tied to the output of your culture. But again, as we try to escape resource growth as our primary value vector for the reasons that I discussed ad nauseum in the previous video, having a steady input of tokens per second seems like a good way to escape this and pursue new value vectors. So this token generator emits 1 token per second just simply because it's easy to understand, and it's 60 beats per second. It's like a healthy heartbeat of a human being. And the cultures themselves provide a distribution for that token, that token pulse. And cultures can change this every second of how they would like to distribute their token based on the productivity or the output from their culture, the individuals and projects within their culture. And this allows, again, true leaders who are proficient at resource allocation to emerge. So it will be transparent if they are being greedy with their token allocation or inefficient with their token allocation. This will be 100% transparent. And then this token then is told where to go. Tokens can be divided into 1 billion nanotokens. So this allows for high granularity of distribution for the cultures. And then when being told where these tokens go, this all filters into the open ledger, the centralized open ledger, where you have a centralized servers to operate this thing. And this is important because you get far more efficiency and just a far easier place to keep the value. When you think about money, it's just information. It's low bandwidth information. And we should keep the easy things easy so we can focus on the hard. This is another thing that cultures aim to do. So money is a very simple, low bandwidth information. And it should be a process that is done for free and instantaneously available around the world anywhere, because it's just such low bandwidth information. This is a very easy problem for a computer to compute. So cultures will use a centralized transparent ledger and earn trust through absolute transparency. Third parties can verify the processes are being done accurately and that there's not any sort of surplus tokens being added or any sort of collusion or corruption or erosion of this platform. And this is, again, you earn this trust through the absolute transparency and through true cryptography, not through distributed server farms, because that adds a lot of complexity and reduces your overall efficiency significantly. And sure, that while that may be okay for just a basic currency, when again, like I said in the first video, when trying to solve the major problems that we have to overcome and solve as we move forward as a civilization, we want to make the easy things easy so we can focus on the hard problems. Getting tripped up and thinking too much, or just allowing what should be an easy problem to overwhelm us and consume too much of our capacity, our innovation and engineering capacity, is not an efficient use of our time. We have a lot of big problems that we need to solve, and so yes, we want to keep the easy things easy so we can focus on the hard. And by having this centralized compute, you want to build this build environment such that the most amount of people can build as easily as possible in this. And actually, the incentive structure for these things should be to get easier over time. The build environment to get easier, not more difficult to build. You want to have as many people contributing as possible, both in the physical domain and in the digital domain. So having the centralized server allows for this. And this is the centralized substrate of all cultures. And each new culture that comes along will simply have a token that is freely given to it. And again, it's up to the culture and how they distribute that token. But this will not change ever. It'll be a constant rate. So you actually have this slowly reducing inflation rate over time. And when cultures get started, it would probably make the most sense to have some sort of initial sale such that you have maybe 10 years of tokens for sale right off the bat, so that you don't have like 100% inflation on the first year, and then 50%. These high rates of inflation right off the bat. You want to have a little bit of surplus that are like maybe roughly 10 years maybe of initial base of tokens that can be purchased, and then add a single token per second, such that you have this increased supply, so that there's some sort of forcing function to actually use this currency, not just hold on for dear life, and to know that you have this fixed decreasing inflation amount of supply. So on top of the substrate is where all the cultures live, and they can go in different directions. That's the whole point. You don't want an issue with a lot of our current organizational structures is when you're constrained based on your geography, you inherently have many different fundamental belief systems within that geography. And when they're all trying to go this one direction, of course you're going to have many people within that organization that are unhappy and want to go different directions. And what you end up having is just this kind of metaphorical rope around everybody where everyone's trying to go different directions, and it nets out to zero or more close to zero. And more than that, everyone is just unhappy because they all want to go different directions, but they all kind of don't go anywhere at all. So what cultures aim to do to solve this, especially now that we're entering this digital world where this is now possible, is you just let them be free, and everyone can just choose the direction they want to go. They can choose the vector and their value vectors that they believe in. And people with fundamentally similar belief systems can go forth on their own. And if they are effective in whatever they are pursuing, then other people with that similar belief system will join them, and they can pursue their value vectors on their own. And this way, you not only improve the productivity because it's way less infighting and way more actual contribution to your value vector that you believe in, but then I think there's just general far more happiness because you're not stuck and forced to stand beside and believe the same thing as your neighbor, even though you just don't have the same fundamental belief systems, which is fine. There's no one right or wrong belief systems. It's just they're different belief systems, and people should be free to have 100% vote of where they spend their time, their resources, and their ideas. So that, again, this is what cultures can provide. And so the cultures that are each going their various directions, each culture has two primary structures: a foundation and a potential. And the foundation contains again, as it sounds, just like what you'd want in a well-functioning organization. So in this case, you'd want some polling functionality, such as this digital. Now that we're in this digital era, you can get very rapid feedback loops on any questions that you have within your organization. People that are within the organization, a culture that are not leadership can initiate polls, or leadership can initiate polls, and you can have polls that have self-executing code based on the result, or you can just have polls that have no forced actions after the poll. And this is kind of more what you'd want to have, I think. True leadership will be responsive to the people within their organization without being forced to. So they see the feedback, they have a finger on the pulse, and then they can really guide it in a way such that try to align value vectors and try to align belief vectors here. But the culture leadership will be able to take it in the direction they want. And what's cool here and important as we think about this operating system structures of the future is that if you find yourself in a culture that you're always don't agree with the direction that they go, or that you're on the minority side of the polls all the time, then you're just free to break free and go to support another culture with your time and ideas and resources, and support one or multiple other cultures, or fork this culture and take it in your own direction. And if some amount of people also believe in the direction you want to head, and they bring their ideas and resources and time to your culture, then you have a higher probability of being successful. And this just seems like a characteristic of a organizational system of the future that we want. Also within the foundation, you'll have a rule ledger, and this again is fully flexible for however a culture wants to initiate this. They can have rules set by the leadership, they can have rules that are voted in by the people of the culture, or they can have some mix of this or no rules at all. But it would seem likely that you'd want some form of constraints to help, or effective cultures would have some constraints to help guide the direction along your growth vectors that you believe in. And these rules can have characteristics of like a sunset clauses, or make it easier to vote rules out than vote rules in, or have some sort of character links on rules so that it's all understandable for the people of the culture. And they just try various formats here for the culture. And that's the whole idea of having many cultures operating simultaneously, is that we'll be able to see how various structures, how various organizational architectures work. Also within the foundation is a purpose trust, and this is the bridge between the digital world and the physical world. And this allows the culture to own infrastructure and operate infrastructure in the physical domain, such as server farms and maybe renewable energy, maybe manufacturing of some kind, maybe global campuses for innovation hubs or something. So this is an important feature that you need to really make progress in the digital world and connect and do productive stuff in the physical domain. And purpose trusts inherently have no centralized ownership. So this maintains decentralized ownership while in the physical domain. So the last couple of things inside of the foundation are keys, and keys essentially are just unique identifiers. So you'd have unique identifiers for individuals, and then you'd also have unique identifiers for groups that have pointers to the individual keys. And that would be useful for projects within the culture, things of that nature. And you'd want this so that you have a way to, these keys that represent that individual within the culture, so that the culture can allocate tokens to them, or individuals within the culture can exchange tokens with each other. And again, because you have this centralized, efficient database, you can do all this exchange for free. I think the only constraint you probably would want on your database for like the money database is just to have it so that you probably want some sort of frequency limit of trading, such that you don't end up with this zero value added behavior such as arbitrage or quote unquote high frequency trading, because this is a zero value add behavior and helps nobody really. It just adds burden to the central server. But you want the ability for all well-intentioned individuals to freely move their time, ideas, and resources around between cultures if they so choose. So this is the foundation of a culture. And then on top of that is a culture's purpose. And this is really where the value vectors are set for a culture. And this is where the action is, so to speak. And the purpose of a culture has two primary bodies. One is the nucleus, and as it sounds, this is the center. This is the heartbeat. This is where the minds meet in the digital space, and you have all of this. This is where you have the potential for this brain earth, this connected consciousness, and the cultures themselves build their own nucleus. Or, of course, cultures can, because it's all transparent, you can copy other nucleuses from other cultures, but this is where the potential to meaningfully engage that ocean of potential I was talking about in the second video, meaningfully engage, meaningfully incentivize, meaningfully open up that outflow of opportunity that the internet has provided in this global forum, in this global arena. And the cultures that do this effectively will be very successful. They will be very productive. And so I think I said this in the first video, like the purpose of organizational leadership is to provide the best opportunity to the individuals within that organization to thrive. Give them the resources, the incentives, the tools, the means of collaborating, communicating, and it all in some engaging, meaningful way. And doing this at scale has not been done before, and this is a very difficult issue to solve, a difficult problem to solve. But if solved and when solved, this is going to change just how we collaborate as a global unit. And it would seem that because cultures can, again, they can go off in their own directions, so that really, ideally, your culture has more similar people with similar belief systems. So there's just less infighting there. So you can really focus in on the problem and stop the daily fight and begin the daily work to solve these things. So creating this brain Earth has massive potential, and likely also within the nucleus you'd have like some sort of educational processes, but not traditional style. You want to gamify education and incentivize education. It's such providing good signal into your brain and like fertilizing and adding to your tree of knowledge within your mind is very powerful and can have outsized results. So cultures that are effective will do a great job at providing this educational infrastructure, even just in the digital sense of how you can efficiently and effectively add information into your mind, and not have it be a big burden or something that nobody wants to do, but have it be a great time. And maybe you're somehow incentivized to do this. And then just what happens here is when you start increasing the amount of signal in our brains, and again, cultures can choose what is important or not important, but the ones that do this well, that are meaningfully trying to make some progress here, the potential is huge. And those, again, that get this right, this can be quite meaningful. And it's quite exciting to think about the future of education when thought about through this lens, and when you can just it would seem like the whole point of education is to give yourself the internal tools of mind, add enough tools to your brain here such that you can output good ideas and good innovations and good solutions to hard problems. And this is exactly what we need right now. So again, the cultures that do this effectively, that can stimulate the mind in some meaningful way and provide as much signal and information that's useful such that you can create useful output and great ideas and great solutions, seems like a good thing. So there's a lot of innovation and potential that can happen here as we enter, again, this increasingly digital future. Then, of course, there's some that you can do entertainment in this nucleus, and there's just amazing amounts of things. The nucleus is, again, the heartbeat of a culture, and the potential here is quite great. So good cultures or productive cultures and effective cultures will meaningfully incentivize people to work on this and to make progress on how that is constructed. Outside of the nucleus, within the purpose of a culture is projects. So anybody within a culture can start a project, including the leadership of the culture itself. And these projects are essentially just mini cultures within the culture. They kind of have the same structure, just within the purpose of the culture. And it is likely that the successful ones will be ones that are working towards the value vectors of the culture that they reside within. And these cultures emit their own little token, and they have their own set of constraints, and the leadership will have the ability to allocate their tokens as they see desired, as they feel is right. And then if other people find value in what is being created here, they can invest their tokens into this project, or the culture itself can divert tokens from its generator, from the token generator coming in to support this project if finds that it's doing meaningful work and effectively contributing towards their value vectors. And this is cultures in a nutshell. And I think this will of course evolve over time, but again, the whole idea here is just to create this framework, this foundation for, and inherently have the characteristics that would seem to be something that you'd want as we enter this era of abundance, as we enter this increasingly interweave with digital information, provide this immunity to power and control and oversight capture, and create this conscious evolution process through absolute transparency and the ability to see everything done before you and then fork off. And what this does, I'll kind of transition here into talking a bit about Culture Earth and what I kind of recommend broadly for cultures and what the potential is for these things to do, is you want to escape this resource growth value vector and having this once a second culture pulse, like token pulse, does this. And what you want to do is incentivize behaviors and actions that are not just maximizing the unit output that we've inherited from our resource growth value vector. Because this resource growth value vector, as discussed at length in the previous video, is all about maximizing the units of any of product or service sold, regardless of its higher level societal effects. And same thing in the digital space, it's just the seconds of attention captured and quantity of engagement. And essentially, the thing is, when you think about the unit economics in the resource growth value vector that we just evolutionarily inherited, and yes, this was inherited for a reason. This was successful evolutionary, like through an evolutionary lens, because those that valued this resource growth did better than those that didn't. But again, now that we're here, if we just continue to hold on for dear life to this thing, it seems like we'd fall victim to the same trap as all previous generations. And now that we have technology, this digital era that no previous generation had, we have the ability to escape this resource growth value vector. And how you would do this, so the step one anyway, is when you think about the unit economics of the resource growth value vector, you have the cost of your good, and then you have your profit on your good or your service or whatever. And as soon as you have that profit on your unit economics, then the reward, that's your little bit of reward for that's how you get your reward, and you get your reward by selling that unit. So then the natural behavior for people that are well-intentioned, just trying to do well in life, which is a good thing, is to maximize that output, regardless again of any other benefit, of any other downsides or upsides. It's not really thought about. It just, your reward is to sell is per unit. So your incentive is to maximize units sold, maximize seconds of attention captured. And while this was not a huge deal in previous, as we were still expanding geographically and demographically and had not entered this era of abundance, continuing to crank everything to maximum, which is the symptom of having that little profit piece on the unit economics of the good or service, that is increasingly inappropriate and increasingly unstable as we kind of move forward in this era of abundance. And the technology level just makes this, again, unsustainable and unneeded. But you still need this competition, and you want more competition. This capitalism competitive thing is what you really need. But just we need to divert the incentivized action from maximizing units to maximizing some other value vectors, growth along other value vectors, such as sustainability of a product or resilience of a product, usefulness of a product, utility of a product. So what a culture Earth will do and would be recommended for other cultures is you just delete the profit off of the unit economics of this thing. And then instead, the culture incentivizes anybody or any idea or any process or any invention, any technology that improves the product or service along its growth, its value vectors of, say, sustainability, resilience, utility, usefulness, these kinds of things. And while it seems hard to wrap your head around in the beginning, the goal here is for when others see that this is happening, and if some subset of the people believe in that model, and the products maybe are that good because all the incentive is on making that product better, not just selling that product, then the only way this is successful is if some of these people start to bring their ideas and their time and their resources to the cultures that are doing this, and the ones that they feel are like aligned with their values and their belief systems. So it's just the first thing we have to appreciate is that it's a choice now for us, that we can pursue new value vectors if we so choose, that are not just our inherited evolutionary resource growth and quantitative resource growth vectors. You can choose, and this is what cultures allow us to do. And if you think about this, just quick nerd moment, if you think about this in calculus, if you have what I call like a growth function curve, usually it's an S curve for companies and organizations and countries in general. Typically they start out slow, and then there's some capital and resources and talent that come in, and then the innovation curve increases. They build out their technology, but then at some threshold, the incentive structure changes from offense to defense, where you go from innovation and engineering to which is the slope of the line. And then once you get past a certain threshold, then the incentive structure then turns to defensive behavior, trying to maximize the output, and which is the integral of this function, the area under this curve. And then of course the first derivative flattens out, the actual innovation tangent flattens out, and all effort again is going into maximizing the integral. But if you delete the profit of the unit economics of this thing, then the area under the curve is negligible. It does not matter. And then all that matters is the first derivative, is the slope of the line. And so what Culture Earth would do, and other cultures can do, is to just incentivize that slope of the line. Anybody that comes up with new ideas or inventions or technology, whether that's in the general beginning design of this thing, or it's in some sort of functionality or manufacturing, distribution, whatever it is, those people are incentivized to that's where all the incentive structure is to pursue growth along those value vectors. And so the net result here is that you're not just forcing everything to be maximum output, because sometimes you just want one of something, or the world just needs one of something, or none of something. So, and if you don't have the reward on the unit economics of this thing, on the output of this thing, then there's no forcing function to try to push something artificially that doesn't need to be pushed, and instead just focus on the product itself. So this is like a kind of hard to wrap the head around initially, but this is such a fundamental, the fundamental root cause of so much of the issues today, even in the digital world, with this unhealthy relationship that we are having with technology because of this ads model, which is again a function, which is a result of this resource growth value vector in the digital space, that are just, you have these brilliant people, these brilliant engineers and designers and amazing people, and same within the physical domain, and they don't mean to be they don't have ill intentions here. It's just the incentive structure for their reward is to maximize the output, maximize the resource growth output. So if we do not, it's fundamental that we escape resource growth as our primary value vector and pursue new ones. And this is what Culture Earth will do, and what cultures are capable of more broadly. Also, just a little tangent on our existing resource growth value vector. When you have a organization that's still trying to operate within this resource growth value vector that's no longer expanding demographically or geographically, and you're kind of entering this era of abundance, but it's still expecting resource growth. You have this embedded growth obligation along the resource growth value vector. Then what happens is when it's not getting it naturally, it gets it artificially by creating more resource placeholder, which is just money. So this money then, which is not a resource, but it's a resource placeholder, it just can get extracted by increasing the cost of things within the organization. And then on the transfer of these things, like say take shelter, for example, when it gets transferred, then the tax the tax on the transfer is increased. And from a banking's perspective, because these guys, a bank is like the primary middleman here, they have the ability to, their incentive, their number one product is mortgages, is loans for shelter. And their incentive is to maximize the amount of money they give to the home buyer, such that the home buyer will be indebted to the bank for their entire life and be paying mortgage payments their entire life. But this has so many downstream effects, because then when this home buyer has the opportunity to borrow more money, and the home seller knows that, and the construction sector knows that, and the suppliers know that, then of course they're incentivized to maximize the price, because they know that the home buyer has the ability to get this capital from the bank. And so you end up having this kind of vicious circle here, where the more the bank allows the home buyer to take or to borrow, which is good for the bank because they get the more interest over the lifetime of the mortgage, ideally the whole lifetime of the individual, which is madness, then the home buyer would be crazy not to try to maximize what they sell the house for. And then the same thing with the construction industry and the suppliers. They of course will keep on reaching the limit of what the bank is allowing the home buyer to borrow. So anyways, you just get in this loop here of just instability, just to try to extract resource placeholders, because there's no actual resources that are being created here. And it's just this creates a large wealth inequality gaps, and again, just many other, and this is just one example. Shelter, there's many such examples, but shelter is a primary. This is a very easy to understand example, and a very prevalent one in our current resource growth value vector orientated organizational structure. So this middleman culture is a symptom of this resource growth value vector, inherited resource growth value vector. So this is the only way to get out of this, escape this, is to pursue new value vectors, which is what cultures enable. And to discuss a little bit more about Culture Earth, it'll also have two culture-run projects, one being local and one being Halo. And these projects are just, again, trying to do everything it can to just create this great environment and the sustainable environment, this fun environment, this resilient environment for humanity. And so on the local side, the local project, this is essentially just trying to bring the pillars of civilization, the pillars of survival, to a regional level. And this increases resilience and increases sustainability, because you reduce your reliance on global supply chains, which have many volatile aspects to them, as they are suspect to sanctions and conflict and weather events and these types of things. Then if you have it locally, and you also have to exert a lot of energy to transport those goods and food, example, for around the world. Whereas if you have many regional areas that are generating renewable electricity, generating local food and local goods, and it's all transported with renewable energy powered vehicles of some kind, then you have a lot more higher sustainability and higher resilience, because if any one of these regions go down, all the neighboring regions can step in and help out, whether that's food or energy or goods. And there's a lot of technology that can improve these pillars of civilization and survival. And this is what Halo is for, is to work on the technology to help enable this in a very low cost, very sustainable way. Because it's not, while we have a lot of great technology today, this can get a lot better by applying this brain earth, again, this ocean of potential, if we can harness it correctly. And so that leads into Halo, which is just the hardcore engineering and innovation hub. And this is really what excites me the most, because this is what can leverage this brain earth, this conscious evolution process, in an extremely powerful way, extremely meaningful way. When we can focus on this technology for a better humanity and increasing the sustainability and resilience of humanity, then Halo is the type of place where that will leverage this and building these technologies of the future. And so I think without getting too in depth in the engineering details, I think the first 3 projects that Halo would work on, to me, seem like the most prevalent engineering problems that can most help our current situation. Is first would be on the energy side, would be small diameter electric autonomous subterranean tunnel boring machines. And this essentially is to build a subterranean energy nervous system for civilization. This has many benefits, because you are not affected by surface level events like extreme weather and storms that can down power lines and reduce your reliability of energy transfer. You protect yourself against electromagnetic pulses, either man-made or solar flares. You also solve the not in my backyard problem, where people don't want these big power lines running across their beautiful backyard view, which is totally understandable. And to solve this problem, you need this underground energy nervous system, this backbone. And this is a difficult problem to solve, but definitely solvable. And if you can create this in some very low cost way, to just have this backbone of energy or of copper or aluminum at extreme high voltage, because another advantage you have is when you're underground, you can crank the voltage way up, because you won't have it'll be insulated by the material between the surface and where the tunnel is, and you can go to really any depth you want. Is you can crank the voltage way up to some amount of megavolts, and such that you can take it to the end of the materials, like to the brink of like the highest possible voltage that the material will allow, and just have again this very low cost energy backbone, energy nervous system in a subterranean way. But the technology that needs to get to do this is this very low cost tunneling technology that's autonomous. And you don't want 1 or 2 or 10, you want maybe hundreds or thousands of these things all tunneling together. They automatically are evacuating the tunnel's material, reinforcing, and then bringing in the high voltage lines after it. And this really solves the energy problem. When you can connect local renewable energies regionally, but then you also really can connect to the renewable energy concentrated zones. As one example, in North America, if you put 100 kilometer by 100 kilometer square solar panels around in the sunniest areas of North America, that solves the energy. That's all the energy we need on the electricity front for all of North America. And you wouldn't want this all in one spot, but that's roughly a terawatt is the current power demand, and you could solve this just by that relatively small square of solar panels. And of course, for redundancy and time of day stuff, you wouldn't want it all in the same area, but you could have some smaller number of these really renewable energy concentrated zones, and then connect them on this backbone, and then support them as well with with energy backup technology and connecting into more local renewable generation sources as well. So that's the subterranean tunnel thing. I think that would be extremely helpful and a great application for this global brain Earth to tackle. The second one would be electric autonomous drones that are probably, and the first use case would be for forest fires, for meaningfully solving this forest fire problem. Again, very solvable, but this forest fire thing is all about mass flow rate of water and response time. So you want to lower your response time so the fire isn't too out of control by the time you get to it. And then you also want to just crank up by orders of magnitude the mass flow rate, the volumetric flow rate of water that's applied. Right now, our current solutions of spraying hoses on the ground by firefighters, which is heroic but very dangerous to the humans that are doing this. And then with the helicopters, it's like the interval is too long here, so it's like spinning on a on a bonfire. So what you want is the very, very high mass flow rate, such that you have this never-ending waterfall of water falling on this fire. And if you can think of this visually, you just think of this like it would blacken the sky. You'd have this matrix grid of drones that are in this cylindrical pattern, dropping the water on the fire, going back to its ground infrastructure to reload on water and energy, and then taking off again. But you have enough such that there's no downtime. It's just constantly outpouring that water on the fire. And use sensors on these drones and more advanced algorithms and compute to determine the most efficient places to deposit the water on the fire. And if you could do this and have some kind of high-level monitoring drones to identify the fires as soon as they start, then you can have this be attacking this fire way quicker than we currently do, such that it can be extinguished faster and do less damage. And you probably want, like in the future of firefighting here in the forest fire sense, and anyway, is you probably do want to let the natural fires that are not by built up areas in civilization to continue on, so that you can maintain some reasonable mass, burnable mass. But of course, as soon as they are by civilizational built up areas, then attack it with full force so that you can save all of our infrastructure and houses and any civilizational kind of sensitive areas. And this is electric autonomous drones, and you probably want to roughly the size of a road width, maybe like 4 meters by 4 meters per drone kind of thing. And there's so much engineering and that can happen here, and innovation. This is a super exciting one, because you can essentially have this flying wing that has a small fuselage for the water, and it can connect to it. It could fly while traveling between fires or whatever. It can have its landing infrastructure integrated with like under the drone, and as soon as it lands, that acts as its legs and as its refill infrastructure, and it ties into the drone's infrastructure on either side of it. So you have this line of drones that all interconnect on the ground infrastructure, and then that has a water throughput line and energy throughput line, such that when they all connect together, they have this long ground infrastructure that can then be tied into either high voltage lines, where you could have specific drones for connecting to high voltage lines, and heavy lift drones for maybe bringing in your own transformers, and then pump drones if you are pumping out of the ocean or out of lakes, or you can tie into the grid, to the hydrants if you are nearby that close to built up civilization. And luckily, because you're only really wanting to protect the civilizational built up areas, these places will usually have some high voltage lines that you can connect to. And yes, as soon as you drop your ground infrastructure, or you land on your ground infrastructure and it's all connected together, then the drone actually disconnects from the ground infrastructure, and then it's just this wing that flies up, and then it lands on the ground infrastructure, essentially on prongs. Like it would be 2 conductor prongs, and maybe on the front, and then maybe on the back you'd have 2 consumable prongs. You'd be for refill lines for water, for instance. Anyways, something like this would be super exciting and just very helpful for humanity as we have increasingly dangerous forest fires every year in the summertime, especially So that would be extremely useful. And then just to take that, you might as well take this to be exciting. The next level is to do high altitude supersonic flight. You need to change some of the technology suite to achieve this. But once you do this, then you could start with cargo, prove out your technology, and then you could then eventually get to transporting humans. And this is just an exciting future I think we want, supersonic travel that is fully sustainable. The last technology that Halo would work on in this first round would be shelter. And shelter is just the current solution is just not, it's silly how little innovation we've had here. Shelter can be better in every metric. We've had like cutting down trees and then transporting and shaving them and then transporting them and milling them and then cutting them again and treating them and transporting them again and then building these stick houses like we've done for centuries now is silly. We can innovate past this and have better shelter in every way. That is at least an order of magnitude cheaper and more comfortable and more sustainable. This is a materials engineering problem. It's a civil engineering problem, mechanical engineering problem, software engineering. But again, this is a solvable problem, and this shelter one is quite critical because shelter is just one small part of one's life, and you should not be indebted to culture for your entire life, like is currently the situation, especially in this increasingly inappropriate system, this middleman value vector, organizational structure value vector that we're in. But if you just think about this from a physics standpoint, you really can make such giant leaps in terms of just shelter construction, way cheaper, way faster, way more sustainable, and just create a house of the future here. This is something that can be extremely exciting and a perfect project for, again, this ocean of talent and this brain earth that we can bring together here. And so, as you can probably tell, this culture, a big part of cultures is solving, or culture earthing, which is solving some of our biggest problems and trying to build a future that's exciting and resilient and sustainable. And to do this, culture earth, just the foundation that culture stands on is the scientific method. And this is prevalent throughout. And it's on top of that grounded fundamental belief system that you can have something that's structural to work from and experiment and try things and use physics as your law. So this is cultures and culture earth, and I hope that this explained in some meaningful way kind of where this all comes from, why I think it's important right now, and just again this spark of excitement for the future, and hopefully we can escape this thought that the future is somehow is bad or is ending in some way. And this is only the case if that's what we believe and that's the actions we take. But if we take actions to build a future that we want, that we're excited and proud of, then this is the future that we will have. So it's up to us to do this, and cultures, I think, are a great place to start. And like I said at the end of the last video, it's not so much about talking and pitching how cultures can just solve this problem, but it's more about just talking about this more broadly and getting this conversation going and just understanding and thinking deeply about the moment that we're in and how we can leverage the technology and this moment in time to truly build a future that we want. So the next steps here is going to be just communication and building this community of people who are ready to push forward and are excited about this and are looking for something looking for something exciting to work toward. And so we have developed a website which is all about this. It's all about just communication in the beginning. Anyway, this is the beginning of the nucleus, I suppose you can call it, of Culture Earth. And in the beginning, this will just be communication, simple text-based interface. We can talk privately, we can talk in groups, there's a voting system, so the good ideas that people agree with can kind of rise to the top, and we can discuss those, and then just start building this thing. This is not intended to be some ongoing podcaster series or YouTube thing at all. This is intended to reach out and as some sort of call to action to come together, and those that are ready to start building, we should start building. So to finish up here, I'm going to read a definition of cultures that I've tried many times to describe cultures in many definitions, and it's difficult because cultures are many things and represent many things and take many shapes and forms. And on one such attempt, I came out with a very non-technical definition, but maybe it might help for some portion of people. So I'll read that now. Cultures are a seed, a mass of potential, a belief in the future, an emergence of unconditional hope seeking fertility within the voluntary minds of those ready to push forward. Our world has changed, unexpectedly bound in connected consciousness, presently severed from what once seemed eternal battle. Fearing no longer environment nor predator, but human and self. A species lost in transition, seeking purpose beyond survival, struggling to make sense of what is with what once was, treading cross-flowing currents of abundance and stagnation, breaching another threshold of life's incredible odyssey, seemingly unnoticed. Though, deep within life's inexplicable beauty, an undercurrent trembles. To build new, not destroy old. Merge hardened wisdom with youthful sparks of creation. Escape inertia's gravity to explore new pathways, neither by force nor sacrifice, rather shining a light on human ingenuity, love, and curiosity. We are here. This is cultures. Maybe I should have started with that.